July 1864. The air in Virginia hangs thick, humid, heavy, almost unmoving. Somewhere beyond the tree lines and shallow trenches, two men shape the fate of a nation. One is Robert E. Lee, precise, elegant, a master of maneuver. The other, Ulysses S. Grant, quiet, relentless, a man who does not stop. But here's the truth most people miss. This wasn't just Lee versus Grant. It was something bigger, colder, unstoppable. It was man versus machine. The war that changed everything. Before this war, battles moved at the speed of horses and ink. Orders were written by hand, sealed, and handed to a writer who might arrive hours later, or not at all. But by 1864, something had shifted. The American Civil War had become the world's first truly modern war, and technology, quiet, mechanical, efficient, was beginning to decide who lived and who didn't. 1. The telegraph. War at the speed of thought. Imagine trying to fight a war, blind. That was how generals operated before the telegraph. Then the Union strung over 15,000 miles of wire across the North, stretching from Washington to the front lines. Grant didn't just command armies. He commanded information. Messages moved in minutes. Orders changed in real time. Entire strategies could shift before the enemy even knew what was happening. Meanwhile, Lee relied on couriers, men on horseback, riding through forests, dodging capture. Sometimes they arrived too late. Sometimes they never arrived at all. So while Lee planned brilliance, Grant simply moved faster. This wasn't just communication. It was control. 2. Railroads. The iron arteries. If the telegraph was the nervous system, railroads were the bloodstream. The Union controlled over 22,000 miles of track. The Confederacy? Less than half, and much of it fragile, disconnected, and vulnerable. Grant could move thousands of soldiers overnight. Artillery, ammunition, food, all of it arriving like a sudden storm. Lee couldn't match that. Worse still, Union cavalry would tear up Confederate tracks, twist rails into useless metal, burn depots. At places like Petersburg, it became painfully clear. Cut the railroads, and you starve the army. And that's exactly what happened. 3. Rifled muskets. Death from a distance. For centuries, soldiers fought up close, lines of men, smoke, chaos. But the introduction of rifled muskets and the deadly Minié ball changed everything. Now a soldier could kill from 400 yards away with shocking accuracy. The battlefield stretched, and it became a killing field. Yet many generals on both sides refused to adapt. They still ordered mass charges. At battles like Cold Harbor, thousands fell in minutes, not because they lacked courage, but because tactics hadn't caught up with technology. War had evolved. Men hadn't. 4. Artillery. Precision destruction cannons weren't new, but rifled artillery was something else entirely. Longer range, greater accuracy, devastating power. At Petersburg, Union forces mounted artillery on railcars, mobile platforms of destruction. Shells rained down constantly. Day, night, no pause. For Confederate soldiers, there was no safe place, just waiting, listening, hoping the next explosion wouldn't find them. 5. Trenches. The beginning of modern warfare. The weapons forced both sides underground. At Petersburg, soldiers dug trenches that stretched for miles, mud walls, tunnels, makeshift shelters. This wasn't the romantic war people imagined. This was survival. Men lived like shadows beneath the earth, surrounded by smoke, disease, and fear. Charging across open ground became almost suicidal. And in that moment, long before World War I, America had already seen its future. 6. Balloons. Eyes in the sky. For the first time in history, generals could look down on the battlefield. Union observation balloons floated high above, spotting troop movements. Even more incredible, telegraph wires ran from the balloons to the ground. Observers could report enemy positions instantly. Lee rarely had access to this, which meant something dangerous. His movements were no longer invisible. 7. Naval power. The stranglehold. While Lee and Grant fought on land, another war unfolded on water. Union ironclad ships and blockades choked southern ports. No supplies, no trade, no relief. The Confederacy slowly suffocated. Grant's victory at Vicksburg, one of the war's turning points, was only possible because of naval dominance. The rivers belonged to the Union, and so eventually did everything else. 8. Industry. The silent army. Here's the part that truly doomed the South, not a battle, not a general, but factories. The North produced weapons, ammunition, uniforms, medical supplies, rail equipment in endless quantities. The South struggled to keep up. Lee's men often marched barefoot, hungry, poorly equipped. Grant's army could recover from losses. Lee's army could not. 9. Medicine, survival as strategy. The Civil War wasn't just deadly, it was transformative. The Union developed organized ambulance systems, field hospitals, use of anesthesia. Men who once would have died returned to fight again. The Confederacy lacked supplies. Infections spread. Disease killed more than bullets. Even survival became uneven. 10. Photography. War becomes real. For the first time, civilians saw war as it truly was. Photographers like Matthew Brady captured haunting images, bodies in fields, faces frozen in death, the cost of war undeniable. These images changed public opinion. War was no longer distant. It was personal. 11. Signal Corps. Communication on the move flags by day, torches by night. The Union Signal Corps relayed messages across battlefields in minutes. Mobile telegraph wagons followed armies, keeping communication alive even during movement. Lee's army struggled to match this, and in war, minutes matter. 12. Repeating rifles. Firepower. Unleashed. Most soldiers fired one shot, then reloaded. Union troops with Spencer rifles, 7 shots before reloading. The difference was terrifying. Confederate soldiers faced waves of bullets they simply couldn't match. One officer reportedly said, "They load once and fire all week." 13. Engineering. War rebuilt Union engineers reshaped the battlefield itself. Pontoon bridges built in hours. Railroads destroyed and rebuilt. Massive mining operations at Petersburg, they dug a tunnel under Confederate lines and detonated it. The ground exploded. War had become mechanical. 14. Intelligence. Codes and spies. Telegraph lines could be tapped, messages intercepted, so both sides developed codes, ciphers, secret systems, a war within the war. But again, resources mattered. The Union stayed ahead. 15. Experimental weapons. Fear as a tool. Even early flamethrower-like devices were tested. Unreliable, rare, but terrifying. Rumors alone could shake entire units, because in war, fear spreads faster than fire. 16. Mobile telegraph. Command anywhere. Grant didn't need to be everywhere. He just needed to be connected. Telegraph wagons allowed communication deep into the field. Lee, still dependent on riders, always behind. 17. Railroad guns, moving giants, cannons mounted on rail cars, heavy, mobile, devastating. They could strike where needed, then disappear. Industrial warfare had arrived. 18. Maps, knowledge is power. Better surveying, faster printing. Grant's commanders had accurate maps. Lee often relied on memory and incomplete information, and in war, knowing the ground can mean everything. The end of an era. Robert E. Lee remained brilliant. His tactics, his instincts, his leadership. But brilliance alone wasn't enough anymore, because Ulysses S. Grant wasn't just fighting with men, he was fighting with wires, rails, machines, factories, information. The Civil War began as the last war of the Old World. It ended as the first war of the modern age. And in that new world, it wasn't just the better general who won, it was the side that embraced the future. So what do you think? Did technology truly decide the war? Or was it still the men behind it? Drop your thoughts. If this story pulled you in, stay with us. Tap like, subscribe, and pass it on to someone who loves history the way you do. There are still so many stories buried beneath the surface, quiet moments, overlooked details, turning points that changed everything. And we're just getting started. Until next time, keep the past close.